How many workers should the firm hire? This is the standard form in which you'll get factor markets questions. So let's take a look at a numerical example where we have these various terms. First of all, little l, the number of workers the firm hires. If they don't hire any workers, then little q, the output of the firm, will be 0. So L, the number of workers hired, Q, the output of the firm. Marginal physical product, also called marginal product of labor, we'll see that in a sec. That's a question of how much output changes when you hire one more worker. The price, let's say, is $2. The price, that's not the price of labor, that's the output price, the price in the product market. How much the firm can sell the output for. Total revenue, P times Q, right now the firm isn't selling anything, but total revenue is the price times the amount the firm is selling. And then marginal revenue product, that's in blue here because that'll be the most interesting one. That's what we're really looking for. How much it changes the firm's revenue if the firm hires one more worker. So let's fill in these table. And you'll be given data something like this. With one worker, the firm produces 3 units of output. With 2, 7. With 3, 12. With 4, 15, 17, and 16. So that's just telling you sort of production function. Given that much labor, how much will the firm produce? Marginal physical product then tells you when you go from 0 to 1 workers, output goes up from 0 to 3. When you go from 1 worker to 2 workers, output goes up from 3 to 7. In other words, an increase of 4. That's what marginal physical product is telling you. How much more output do you get when you hire one more worker? From 7 to 12, the increase is 5. From 12 to 15, the increase is 3, 2. And then we have this funny case here. There's something fishy about that 6th worker. Output fell from 17 to 16. The price for now, we will assume, is always $2. Whatever we're making here can be sold for $2. And given that information, we can calculate total revenue because total revenue is just Q times P gives us total revenue. When you're selling 0, you don't make any revenue, but when you're selling 3 at a price of 2, 3 units of output at a price of 2 gives us a total revenue of 6. 7 at a price of 2, 14. 12 at a price of 2, 24. 30, 34, and 32. Now we're in a position to calculate marginal revenue product. How much does revenue change when you hire one more worker? The first worker raises total revenue from 0 to 6, so raises revenue by 6. The second worker, over here, the second worker raises revenue from 6 to 14. That's an increase of 8. 14 to 24 is 10. 24 to 30 is 6. 30 to 34 is 4. And here again we have this fishy feeling we're not going to hire that 6th worker because he or she causes total revenue to fall. Now, if we know the wage, let's say we're given that the wage the firm has to pay workers is $5. $5 an hour, let's say, if these figures are hourly. If every worker can be hired for $5, a firm can hire as many workers as it wants for $5 an hour, then how many should it hire? Well, should it hire the first guy? Yes, because the first guy raises revenue by $6 but only costs $5. The second worker also raises revenue by $8, only raises costs by $5. The third worker raises revenue by 10, raises costs by 5. The fourth worker raises costs by, but that's the last one worth hiring. A handy way to do this kind of problem is to draw a line right through your table showing that W is equal to 5. If the wage, constant wage, is equal to 5, then the last worker worth hiring is the fourth worker. Because the fifth worker, these workers, you don't want to hire. They don't raise revenue by enough to justify being hired. We can see this graphically as follows. Now we're making certain crucial assumptions here. We're assuming that at a wage of $5, the firm faces a horizontal supply curve for labor. To be precise, this means that the factor market is perfectly competitive. The firm can hire as many workers as it wants at $5. That is then the firm's supply curve for labor. You want to buy labor, you can get as much as you want at $5. The firm's demand curve for labor is equal to its marginal revenue product, which we saw went from 6 to 8 to 10, down to 6, down to 4, and eventually to -2. I won't plot those points here, but you could draw that if you want to. What we saw is that for the fourth worker, the marginal revenue product was $6, and for the fifth worker, the marginal revenue product was only $4. So yes, it's worth it $6 is greater than 5, so it's worth it to hire that fourth worker. Contributes $6 to revenue and only contributes $5 to total cost. It's, on the other hand, not worth hiring that fifth worker because that worker brings in only $4 while costing $5. So remember, these are always the fourth and the fifth worker. Handy way to think of it. Yes, hire the fourth worker. No, don't hire the fifth worker. Now let's see what happens. What would happen in this situation if wages changed? We can see right away, looking at this graph, anything that changes the wage rate, let's say lowers the wage rate, if we have some new supply curve at some new wage rate W2, all other things being equal, will cause more workers to be hired, more people who are worth it. The way I've drawn it here, if the new wage was equal to $3, then that fifth worker would now be worth hiring. The firm would hire the fifth worker if wages were only 3. Another thing we can see is that if something caused the marginal revenue product of the labor force to fall, let's say there was a fall in the marginal physical product of labor, the workers became less productive, say there was some deterioration in the skill level of the labor force, technology the workforce worked with. If something caused the demand curve to fall, then again, all other things being equal, at the original wage rate of 5, instead of being in equilibrium here, the firm would now be in equilibrium here, would hire fewer workers. But let's go back to the numerical example and see both those points. What happens if wages fall? What happens if the marginal revenue product of labor falls?